If you're anything like me, you grew up completely isolated from the horror genre. Movies that feature ghosts or unstoppable killers were #too spooky for me. Even horror movie trailers were unwatchable. If something was in the horror genre, you could bet your ass I wasn't gonna watch it. That was the mentality I had all the way even through starting college. Horror was a genre that I didn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. But fast forward only a couple of years to where I am now in my life, and I love horror. So what changed? How could I go from totally shunning the genre to embracing it openly? In honor of the spooky season, that's the question I aim to answer today. My hope is that by watching this video, my fellow scaredy cats out there can also learn to engage with and love the horror genre as much as I do now. Before we embark on this educational journey, please remember to like and subscribe. Consider it the entry fee to this not too scary, spooky ride. So, the big question: what do you want to do if you want to get into horror, but even the idea of making toast fills you with dread? The answer may surprise you. To start watching horror, all you have to do is start watching horror. Alright, that's gonna be a wrap. Video's over, let's go. Okay, so that answer is about as obvious as it is worthless. It's got the same energy as saying, if you're homeless, just buy a house. Don't worry though, I'm not just gonna dump this information on you without further explanations. I'm going to explain it. So just sit tight. What I mean when I say to start watching horror is to ease yourself into the genre with less scary content. Or more specifically, with movies or shows that are well made and just so happen to also be in the horror genre. Now, if you're watching this video, I bet that you have no idea where to start with finding media like this. What movies aren't going to make you shit your pants? What's safe for you to watch? There's a lot of media I could recommend. I could even tell you to try watching Goosebumps if you wanted. Unless you're 12 years old, that show isn't going to be scary at all. It's also not particularly good though, and I would like to recommend more elevated media. For example, any of the television shows directed by Mike Flanagan, specifically The Haunting at Hill House, Haunting at Bly Manor, and Midnight Mass. Of these three, I would say Hill House is by far the most traditionally scary. There's lots of jump scares, a lot of malevolent ghosts, and an unsettling atmosphere. It's probably not a great place to start if you're afraid of your own shadow. However, it tells a very genuine story about love and family. And I think the sincerity present throughout all 10 episodes offsets the high chance of pants pissing. This sincerity is also present in Haunting at Bly Manor, perhaps even more so. I consider Bly Manor to be a good deal less frightening, at least as far as the ghosts and ghouls are concerned. If Hill House was a story about family, then Bly Manor at its core is a love story. Midnight Mass, on the other hand, is about a lot of things. As the name implies, it's mostly revolved around themes of religion. Just like the previous two shows, this one is very genuine. In my opinion, it's also by far the least scary. But what if you don't have 10 hours to spend watching a TV show? What if you just want to get in and out, a 20-minute adventure? Well, then you're going to need to watch one of the gazillions of horror movies out there. Crimson Peak is a movie I enjoyed mostly because of how beautiful it looks. Truly, every frame is a painting with this one. It's hard to feel scared when your eyes are too distracted by the yoked-up visuals to even notice the scary stuff. It's kinda like watching a horror movie with an overlay of Subway Surfers. Crimson Peak is certainly lacking in some ways, but if you like the way this looks, I think it's worth a watch. Moving on, with the Silent Hill 2 remake newly released, you might have become infatuated with this universe. and want to immerse yourself more in its oppressive fog. A good place to start would actually be my review of the remake, which can be found here. Seamless self-promotion, let's go! But when it comes to official media, there's actually an entire Silent Hill movie from 2006 you can watch. The movie is pretty mid. It doesn't really belong on a list of good horror, but just like with Crimson Peak, it's visually very appealing. And it includes the same music found in the game, so it sounds just as good as a choir of angels. But these recommendations are honestly just fluff. When it comes to getting into horror, there's really only one movie I feel passionate about recommending to everyone on the horror struggle bus. That movie is really the whole reason I'm making this video, in fact. I just want to have an excuse to talk about it some. The movie I'm referring to is none other than The Ring. This movie was my gateway drug. I'd seen a handful of scary-ish movies before my baptism into this well of fear, but The Ring was the first real horror movie I'd ever set my eyes upon. In my head before I watched it, I thought that The Ring was one of the scariest movies ever made. I thought it had a legendary status of being pants-wettingly terrifying. It was a movie that revolved around ghosts and curses, two things that really scared me on a foundational level. I thought there was no way I'd ever see The Ring. I was sure it would give me PTSD for the rest of my life if I did. But it turns out this movie isn't actually very scary. The Ring isn't a ghost movie, not really. In a lot of ways, it has more in common with like a police investigation movie. The Ring is a mystery thriller. Honestly, it's Scooby-Doo for adults. You might think I'm insane for saying something so controversial yet so brave, but I swear it's true. The acting in this film is also top-notch. Everyone is acting their goddamn hearts out. Even the child actor is giving an Oscar-worthy performance. The script is equally fantastic. It manages to be exciting while maintaining a suitably creepy atmosphere. The things these characters say to each other just work. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up how beautiful The Ring is. You might have noticed over the course of this video thus far, but I'm kind of obsessed with the appearance of movies. If a movie looks like it was filmed inside of a paint bucket, I probably like that movie. That's doubly true for The Ring. This movie was filmed in Seattle, my childhood stomping ground. As crazy as it sounds, the way this movie looks is truer to life than you might think. The entire Pacific Northwest around the Seattle area is cloudy and always a bluish gray. This movie is obviously quite an exaggeration, but the vibes are spot fucking on. Anything that reminds me of my home is instantly going to get some brownie points. I think I've rambled long enough about things that don't really matter. It's time for a deep dive. There will be spoilers ahead. However, if you're anything like me, knowing the plot would actually make watching movies like this a lot more doable for you. So for the first time ever, maybe don't bounce out if you haven't seen The Ring yet, but would like to. The opening scene of the movie is just wonderful. It introduces us to the idea of the haunted videotape using a very typical slasher-style setup. It feels like Katie and Becca, these two teenage girls, are being stalked by some sort of evil presence. And it's honestly disturbing as fuck. The opening scene is by far the summit of Scary Mountain. It's super tense and unsettling. If you can get through these first 5 minutes, you can get through the entire movie, no problem. It does not get scarier than this. The two girls here aren't just meant to be meat for the grinder either. The death of Katie is the powder keg that sets off the events of the whole movie. She was related to the film's protagonist, Rachel, a reporter who's adept at finding clues for her stories. Obviously, Katie's parents want to know what the fuck happened to their daughter.
I spent 4 hours on the internet and I couldn't find one single case of a 16-year-old girl's heart just stopping.
So they ask Rachel if maybe she can figure anything out about Katie's death. This is by far my favorite aspect of the movie, all the investigation stuff. A lot of this movie revolves around Rachel being an ace reporter and finding clues that get her closer to the truth. It's thrilling to watch, and it all makes logical sense. She has to collect bits and pieces of information from a variety of different sources, and then put them together herself. You can easily track Rachel's journey of discovery from clue to clue. They feed into each other very nicely. At first, it's exciting to see this certified baddie Sherlock Holmes her way into the truth. That is until she finds and watches the videotape.
7 days.
Now her investigation is a matter of life and death, with a timer. Talk about a stressful situation. I freak out just waiting for my alarm clock to go off. With the added pressure of inevitable looming death, Rachel decides to enlist an old flame of hers to help with the investigation. This guy, Noah, thinks he can't help Rachel without first seeing the tape, and so he puts himself on his own doomsday clock. Moron. Between the two of them, and many incredible scenes of investigation work, they figure out that the cursed tape might have originated on a remote island. I don't want to undersell all the investigation elements. I'm only skipping them over because, well, 1, they aren't scary scenes that I need to warn you about, and 2, they're just a lot of fun to watch without knowing where things are going. Anyway, Rachel and Noah think a man living on the island named Richard Morgan will have all the answers they're looking for. But when they track him down, he's shockingly unhelpful. Despite his dramatic exit, we still learn a lot about Richard. We learn a lot about his wife, and even his daughter, Samara. This section of the movie on the island spends a lot less time being focused on tracking down the next clue, and instead focuses on finally getting some answers to the questions burning in our minds. After so much Easter egg hunting, it's nice to just sit back and let some exposition wash over you. Some important things we learn is that Richard's wife began going insane after the birth of their daughter. She began suffering from hallucinations, and blamed Samara for this sudden onset of these dark visions. Richard didn't seem too happy with Samara either. It's implied that he may have even killed her. Jeez, this guy makes Darth Vader look like the world's greatest father. Rachel and Noah follow a lead to one final location before the film ends, a cabin in the woods. By the time they get here, Rachel is out of time. It's been 7 days, nearly to the minute, that she first saw the tape. Her and Noah need to figure out how to stop the curse, and they need to figure it out fast. They realize that the cabin was built directly on top of this creepy-ass well. Rachel gets herself voluntold to go explore it. And to her surprise, hiding in the well is the corpse of Samara. The 7 days are up now, and Rachel should be joining Samara in this watery tomb, but miraculously she's still alive. It seems like finding Samara's murdered corpse was the key to stopping the deaths and the cursed videotape. So I guess that everyone else who's seen the tape, including Noah, must be safe now. The evil is defeated. Happy ending, roll credit. Or maybe not. It turns out Samara is actually an evil ghost. And the only way to avoid being killed by her is to make a copy of the videotape and show it to someone. Rachel did show a copy to Noah after all. Though I don't know how anyone is supposed to figure that out. Samara didn't exactly leave behind a set of IKEA instructions for her victims. So that's a very brief plot summary of The Ring. Apart from a few moments it's a fairly non-frightening film. While the scares are few and far between, the quality is ever present. There's a reason this movie got me to experiment more with the horror genre. This movie taught me that scary movies don't always have to be depressing and mean. They can be enjoyable too. There's so many movies and shows I love that I would have never even tried if it weren't for The Ring. If you're wanting to become a fellow enjoyer of horror, I don't think you can go wrong starting here. You can of course also check out the other movies and shows I recommended. Anything could be up your alley. You just need to go out there and start watching stuff. One final recommendation for you. If you're someone who just wants to watch other people talk about horror and don't necessarily want to view it for yourself, I think you should watch my video on the anime series Shiki. The horror present in that show is very different from every other piece of media I've talked about thus far. There truly is nothing else on the planet like Shiki. In my opinion, it's a show that should be required viewing for the entire human race. It's that important and impactful. But if you don't want to check it out, that's fine too. I'd love if you'd simply like and subscribe on this video. Thank you so much for watching my spooky season special. Have a wonderful Halloween, everyone.